pretty sure I'm in the minority, but I enjoyed this film. Okay, believe it or not, no, you probably will believe it. I almost started this with these things in my ears. I had this instinct to just put them in. I catch myself sometimes when I'm working at my computer with my earbuds in, not listening to anything, but my earbuds are in. It's because I've been audio proofing for so many years. It's just an instinctive reaction to put them in. Okay, that was a tangent, but I wanted to talk about the movie Amsterdam. I went to go see it tonight, Thursday preview, like I typically tend to do when a new movie comes out that I'm interested in. And I was interested in this from the time I saw the trailer, because it looked funny and cute and quirky, and it had this huge ensemble cast of very talented actors. And I was like, well, how can you go wrong? And then when I went to IMDb's page to grab pictures to show for the review. Now, this was before I went to go see it. I saw that the IMDb rating was like 5.8 or 5.7, like below 6. And IMDb is audience driven. And I was thinking, wow, okay, what's wrong with it? What is it that made it that low of a rating? Because it honestly did surprise me that it was that low. And I'm watching it. I'm getting into it. I'm following the plot. I'm drawn in. I like the characters. I like the narrative. I like the acting. I like the story, the way everything unfolded, which ties in with narrative. And I kept waiting for this moment that was just going to jump up and smack me upside the head and be like, this is so stupid. Kind of like with Barbarian. That was what happened with Barbarian. I was loving it all the way up until that final act. And I get out of the theater, and I'm talking with some people there in the lobby. There was a couple that had come out. They had just seen it, and we started talking about it. And I was saying how much I enjoyed it, and they were saying they didn't like it. I was having this conversation with them, and the thing I came away from that conversation with was that, well, one, they felt it was too long, and I could see that. This movie is on the longer side. The runtime is 2 hours 14. Obviously, credits are about 5 to 10 minutes of that. So it is more than 2 hours long. I think the movie actually started at 6:20, around there, and it ended at about 8:30. So let's say, 2 hours and 10 minutes. And okay, so I could see why some people might feel like that's long. For me personally, it was not an issue because I felt like the narrative flowed well. There was a lot of story to tell, and there were a lot of actors, and each actor was given, I feel like, an adequate amount of screen time. And it just flowed in a natural way, and it really didn't feel draggy to me. But also, another thing that these people were telling me was that they went into it expecting it was going to be this kind of, I guess, fast-paced, action-y, mystery, detective-y type of story. And it wasn't. I mean, it was detective-y, it was mystery-oriented because there is this thing that they're trying to figure out. But it's primarily character-driven, dialogue-heavy, very dialogue-heavy, dialogue-driven. It's not really driven by action and adventure and suspense. There is some that happens, but that is not the focus. The focus is on the characters. So that's why this felt more like a character drama. And I'm not typically a huge fan of character dramas, but it didn't feel like your typical character drama, like the type of character drama that I would not really be interested in. I think what drew me into this was the plot device of the mystery and the entanglements that they were involved in and trying to figure out the situation and how to get out of it and how to clear their name and things like that. So that was enough of a hook to get me interested. So I went into it expecting that it was going to, I didn't go into it expecting that it was going to be this fast-paced sort of thing. I felt like it was going to be, especially when I saw the runtime. When I saw that the runtime was more than 2 hours, I figured that this was just going to be mostly a story centered on their friendship, their history, the bonds of their loyalty, and the love between the characters, and that's pretty much what it ended up being. So I was not disappointed in it. I actually enjoyed it a lot. And I'm watching it and was thinking to myself, I think my son would like this, because it's a period piece, takes place in the 1930s. There are flashback things that happen. There's at one point a fairly extended flashback period that takes place during the time of World War I, when the characters first met each other, and it tells their story and how and why they became such good friends with each other. So, obviously, enjoyment of particular films is completely subjective, but I honestly don't get why the reviews are as negative as they are. And I'll touch on that a bit more when I get to the end. I started off talking about cons people had, when I really meant to start off talking about the things that I liked. Well, it starts off with this line, "A lot of this really happened." And I was curious as to, okay, how much of this really happened? And then you find out at the very end, because they show a clip at the very, very end of an actual real clip from 1933 about a character that's in, or a character, a person that was, that inspired a character in this story. And that's what the events are around. But this is pretty much completely fictional. As far as like the three friends and all that stuff, these people were fictional. There's just like one character, I believe, that was an actual inspired by a real person. And that guy's name was, I wrote it down. Hold on. Well, shoot, I wrote it down. It was some general. I thought I had put it right in here in the notes, but I don't see it. Anyway, I really appreciated the comedy in here. It wasn't slapsticky and ridiculous comedy like Dumb and Dumber, which dumb comedy. I don't like dumb comedy. I know a lot of people do. That's just not my thing. And it was comedic. The comedy was situational. It was also dialogue. The comedy was also in the dialogue, and the facial expressions, and the body postures, and the way the people interacted with each other. And these moments of levity sort of, it was funny because like there would be these situations that could be very serious. I mean, there's the two main characters played by John David Washington and Christian Bale. They're under suspicion of something, and it's quite serious. Yet there's this funny stuff that's happening around them that I don't know. It worked for me, and I thought it was pretty funny. There were multiple times that I chuckled out loud, and so it was about, I don't know, 20 plus minutes in, and I was really enjoying it. And I'm still then an hour in, and I'm still really enjoying it, and I enjoyed it all the way up till the end. And I liked how things concluded. I do have one or two cons that I'll bring up at the end when I address the cons other people had. The cast in here, like I said, was actually a very, very big cast with a lot of well-known faces and names, and I felt like everyone did a great job. This is the first movie of John David Washington's that I have seen all the way through. I tried to watch Tenet, you guys. I couldn't make it past like 30 minutes. And then I never returned to it. And there was another movie he was in that I think went straight to Netflix, and I was curious to check that out, but I haven't watched it yet. So I was determined that I really was interested to watch this all the way through. And especially just the entire cast was also a draw for me. And Christian Bale, he was so good in this. To me, he is so comedic. And I remember when I was seeing, I watched this trailer. It was playing the trailer for this in front of a movie, and my brother was with me, and he said, "Why is Christian Bale like trying so hard to look so unattractive? Because he's a handsome man." And as I was watching that, I was reminded of that, because he looks kind of goofy. You know, his hair's like all, and he's all gaunt and everything. But Christian is kind of gaunt in the face anyway, to begin with. But when you watch it, so he's supposed to have aged a bit from the flashback time, and it did look like they did some de-aging on him and John David Washington. It looked like there was some de-aging going on, well, especially with Christian. And then it's supposed to jump forward from like the 19, you know what, I can't remember what year it was a flashback to. It was World War I, and then it jumps to 1933. So there's been a time jump of about 15 years, and he also has these injuries he's dealt with as a result. That's my dog. She wants to get up in my lap. Hold on a minute. Come on, Chibi. Oh, there you go, girl. Okay. All right, now I have to check the dang camera. This is the problem. When she does this, she was in my lap. Hold on a minute. Okay, well, it looks okay. She was in my lap, and then she jumped down before I started filming. And then she wanted back up. She's so fickle. But what I was saying is that Christian Bale's character has had these injuries happen to him. He's lost an eye. He's got terrible scarring. He has to wear these braces because of injuries he received in the war. And so I think that it wasn't that he was necessarily trying to look unattractive. It was just because in the flashback scene he didn't look like that. He looked younger, he looked vibrant, he looked healthy. And then of course, you know, the injuries happen, and so then years later he's got all these issues going on, and he takes all these medicines and to deal with what's going on with him. So he's got that appropriately haggard look that someone like him would have. And this movie does deal very heavily with things like veterans and injuries of war and the consequences of war, and people living with those scars forever, arms lost, terrible scarring on the face, the mask type of thing that he made for people that had terrible facial deformities and injuries from the war. Think, you know, the mask that lady wore in Wonder Woman, the Wonder Woman movie from 2017, stuff like that. That's prominent in there. They show that quite often. In fact, he even wears one under his eye because he's got scarring under his eye and stuff like that. At the same time, those injuries have a comedic part in this movie because his eye's falling out. He's always looking for his eye, you know, and he's wearing the brace and he's kind of hobbled over, and there's moments where that's a bit comedic. So I felt like it worked. I don't know, I just enjoyed it. The banter between them and the dialogue between all the characters, it was just, I felt like it was clever, and I felt like it delivered a nice dash of levity. Sometimes the dialogue, like there were moments where the dialogue would be quirky to the point that I was like, what? I'll give you an example. I even wrote this down. There's a line that Chris Rock's character says. It's like, it just in the middle of this conversation, they're talking, tied into what they were talking about, but he said, well, my grandfather shot someone in the face who shot someone else in the face, but it all worked out. I was like, what? It's just like little things like that. It was just, it was funny to me. Maybe I was just in the right mood when I went to see it. But I like the mystery elements in it. I like the investigative aspect to it. I liked the way the people talked. There was something so pleasing to my ears about the sound of their voice, like everybody's voice. Almost ASMR-like, but not entirely. It was like sometimes they would talk very low, just like normal sort of talk, you know, and sort of lowering the voice when you talk, you know, and just kind of conversational style. And it was just, I liked it. I don't know. I just, whatever. I was really into it. So the cons, there's really only two cons for me that I can think of, because honestly, like I said before, the runtime was not an issue for me. One of the cons was there was, and this is just like, it was a technical thing. There was a scene, it felt like a really wonky, weird edit that happened. And it was just a part where Margot Robbie's characters, they're talking. And then instead of it just ending the scene there and going to the next scene, there's this part where she just kind of walks off and it focuses on her walking off, but it didn't really seem to be something that was necessary. And I just remember noticing it. And then I was like, oh, okay, well, that was kind of weird. That didn't really seem to serve any real purpose. That was like a messy edit right there. And then the other con, the underlying theme or plot device has been so overdone. I'm just getting a little bit tired of this sort of thing. And I'm not going to say what it is, because then that will sort of, if you want to figure it out for yourself, it might kind of ruin the sort of surprise or whatever. But at one point, by the time certain things were revealed, I was like, oh, okay, it's that. All right. You'll know what I'm talking about when it happens. But I'm getting a little tired of that sort of thing. It just feels, it felt like some aspects of it felt like it bordered on preachiness. And at the same time, some of the points that they were making or that they were trying to make, I felt like could be applied towards situations today, but not in the way the filmmakers probably were thinking. I think maybe their preachiness or narrative was aimed at one particular group or side or whatever, when really you could flip that and put it on the other group or side as well. You'll know what I'm talking about when you see it. But it was not enough to detract completely from my overall enjoyment of the film, just because I felt like it was quite well done. And I like the characters. I was reading a critic review when I came home, and they were talking about how that the characters didn't really feel like they had appropriate chemistry, or that they really didn't they weren't convincing. I mean, they're great actors, but they just didn't really seem like these close, long, like lifelong friends or whatever. And that didn't stand out to me. They were convincing enough that I bought it. And another thing was that this critic said, and I wrote it down word for word while I copied and pasted. They said structurally and story-wise, it was a mess. But I had no problem following it structurally. I had no problem following the storyline. One of the complaints was also that it was a complicated plot. Well, yeah, it could be if you're not paying attention. And it's not necessarily the type of film where you have to really focus you just really have to just zone in on it, or you're going to completely lose it. I mean, I was paying attention, but I wasn't like just completely like making sure, or else I might be completely lost and confused. I followed everything. I knew everything that was going on. I understood everything that was going on. There were a ton of characters, but for whatever reason, they all stuck with me. Their names stuck in my head. I knew who they were talking about. I knew what was happening. There was no confusion. I understood the fundamental plot that was like the fundamental mystery that was at place, and all the different elements that were involved and the different people that they were investigating and talking to. I got all of that. It wasn't confusing to me at all. And so that was a little perplexing when I saw that. I guess maybe it could be for maybe if they just not, I don't know. I mean, Tenet, that was a freaking complicated movie, you guys. I could not follow that. Like I said, I was totally lost. And I feel like that's a movie that I would have to watch multiple times to actually get it. And I don't have the energy for that. And I didn't like it enough to want to return to it. So this doesn't compare at all to a movie like Tenet for me. And I mean, if I can follow the plot, I feel like anybody can. But I don't know, that's just me. Another complaint was the blank that the duo didn't do. I'm trying not to give spoilers. That just went out the window as the story diverts to focus on this other thing. And I don't get that complaint either, because this other thing, it didn't go out the window really. The thing was that other stuff was coming up, and revealing certain things. And so this first thing didn't really go out the window. It was what diverted the attention to this other stuff that was being discovered. So I didn't get that negative part of the person's critique either. So I don't know. I looked at the Rotten Tomato score after I got home and I was working on getting this ready, and the critics hate it. They absolutely hate it. They gave it a 34 or something. And the audience feels pretty meh about it. They were like at 64%. So this is going to be one of those very few times where I part ways with both the official critics and the audience. I don't personally feel like this movie was as low as a 5/50%, 6/60% tile range. To me, it's in the 70s. Not necessarily as high as like 90s or even high 80s, but to me, it's in at least the mid to high 70s. I enjoyed it. I thought it was very well done. I wouldn't mind adding it to my collection, and probably will. And I wouldn't mind rewatching it again on the big screen, and I probably will. So I don't know what else to say. I don't want to necessarily say, go watch it, you'll love it, because you might not. You might have the exact same reaction that these audience members had and that other audience members have had that have talked about it online. But I enjoyed it. Maybe you will too. Maybe you won't. If you get around to watching it, let me know what you think. I'm curious to find out. But anyway, that's my thoughts on Amsterdam, and can't think of anything else, so I'm wrapping this up for now. Later.